Hi everyone, you're here with Mark Boutwell at perfectgardens.com. Today we're getting into the story of DDD, from its rise as a revolutionary chemical to the concerns that would eventually lead to its ban. Let's go back to where it all began. By the mid-20th century, DDT was one of the most celebrated chemicals in the world. It had helped control malaria during World War II. It was sprayed across farms, forests, wetlands, and neighborhoods. For a time, it seemed like an uncomplicated success story, a chemical that saved lives and protected crops. Then the questions began. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually through the patient work of scientists studying soils and sediments and the tissues of birds and fish, a more complicated picture emerged. DDT didn't simply do its job and disappear. It broke down slowly, and the compounds it left behind turned out to be just as persistent as the original chemical. One of those compounds is 4,4-DDD. To understand 4,4-DDD, you have to start with DDT itself. DDT, dichlorodenphenotrichloroethane, was first synthesized in 1874, but its insecticidal properties weren't recognized until 1939 by Swiss chemist Paul Muller, who later received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for the discovery. Its widespread use in agriculture and public health programs during the 1940s and 1950s made it one of the most heavily applied pesticides in modern history. When DDT enters the environment through soil, water, or biological tissue, it doesn't remain as a single compound. It undergoes chemical and biological transformations. One of the primary breakdown products is 4,4-DDD, also known as dichlorodiphenyl dichloroethane. The name is slightly different from its parent compound, but the persistence is not. 4,4-DDD belongs to a family of related chemicals that scientists collectively refer to as DDT and its metabolites, or sometimes simply as total DDT. The others include 4,4-DDE and 4,4-DDT itself. These compounds tend to behave similarly in the environment. They bind strongly to organic matter in soil and sediment. They resist rapid breakdown, and they accumulate in fatty tissues of living organisms. What makes 4,4-DDD particularly notable is that it wasn't only a breakdown product. It was also intentionally manufactured and used in its own right as a pesticide, sometimes under the trade name Rothane. So its environmental presence comes from two directions: as a deliberate application and as a residue of DDT's own degradation. The United States banned most uses of DDT in 1972, following growing scientific concern and significant public debate. But the ban on new applications didn't erase what was already in the soil and water. Environmental monitoring conducted by agencies, including the U.S. Geological Survey and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, has detected DDT-related compounds, including 4,4-DDD, in sediments, surface water, groundwater, and biological tissue samples across the country, decades after the original applications ended. The Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, known as the ATSDR, has published detailed toxicological profiles on DDT and its metabolites. According to the ATSDR, these compounds are found most commonly in areas where DDT was historically used for agricultural or public health purposes. They persist in soils and sediments, and they can move slowly through the environment via erosion, runoff, and atmospheric transport. The ATSDR notes that DDT and related compounds, including 4,4-DDD, are lipophilic, meaning they dissolve more readily in fats than in water. This property is central to how they accumulate in ecosystems. Rather than flushing through biological systems, they concentrate, a process ecologists call bioaccumulation. And at each step up the food chain, concentrations can increase further, a process known as biomagnification. The EPA has classified DDT, DDE, and DDD as probable human carcinogens based on animal studies, a classification shared in Category B2. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, has similarly evaluated DDT as possibly carcinogenic to humans. These are the findings of those organizations, based on their respective reviews of available scientific evidence. It's worth pausing on that for a moment. These classifications reflect decades of laboratory and epidemiological research, not a single study, and they apply to the group of compounds, not exclusively to 4,4-DDD in isolation, though DDD is included in those assessments. Wildlife studies have documented particular concern in bird populations. Research published in peer-reviewed scientific literature has associated DDT metabolites, including DDD, with eggshell thinning in certain bird species, a finding that contributed significantly to the regulatory actions of the early 1970s. The bald eagle, the osprey, and the peregrine falcon were among the species that experienced documented population-level effects. Recovery of those populations following the DDT ban has been studied and documented by wildlife biologists over subsequent decades. In aquatic systems, the EPA and USGS have detected 4,4-DDD in river sediments and in fish tissue from waterways adjacent to historically treated agricultural land. Sediment contamination is particularly stubborn. Once these compounds bind to sediment particles, they can persist for generations, slowly releasing back into the water column under certain conditions. The EPA has established maximum contaminant level goals, or MCLGs, for DDT and its metabolites in drinking water, set at 0, reflecting the agency's position that no level is considered without some potential concern. The enforceable maximum contaminant level, or MCL, for total DDT, which includes 4,4-DDD, is set at 0.002 milligrams per liter, or 0.2 micrograms per liter. That regulatory context matters. It reflects both the persistence of these compounds and the ongoing vigilance that monitoring agencies apply to water sources in affected regions. So, what happens when 4,4-DDD is introduced into a water sample and subjected to independent laboratory testing? That's precisely what was examined using drops of balance. The testing was conducted by Envirotech Laboratories Inc., an independent accredited laboratory. The matrix tested was water. The starting concentration of 4,4-DDD in the test water was 50.1 micrograms per liter. After treatment with drops of balance, the measured concentration was 10.5 micrograms per liter. That represents a reduction of 79% under those specific laboratory testing conditions. The full laboratory report is linked below for anyone who wants to review the methodology, the detection limits, and the complete findings directly. The history of 4,4-DDD is in many ways inseparable from the broader story of DDT, a chemical that moved through the 20th century with enormous consequence and left behind compounds that scientists are still tracking in soils, sediments, and water today. Understanding that history doesn't require alarm, it requires attention. Regulators monitor these compounds because persistence matters. Scientists continue studying them because the connections between historical applications and present-day environmental conditions take time to fully map. And independent laboratory testing provides one piece of data, one concrete measurement, in a much larger picture. The published laboratory report from Envirotech Laboratories Inc. is available through the link below. The findings speak for themselves. Drops of balance is not claimed to prevent, treat, cure, or reduce the risk of any disease. Information regarding 4,4-DDD presented in this video comes from publicly available historical, scientific, and regulatory sources cited throughout the video. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Results reflect the specific laboratory testing conditions and may vary. This video contains AI-assisted production.